Hey everybody, welcome to my Suburban Oasis. It's a really nice cool day and I got some requests to film while I am planting some of the plants that I got from my last plant haul. So I thought it would be fun to take you along as I did some of it. My name's Soleil and I garden in a Zone 5B and I am in mid-Michigan and it's a beautiful day, probably just the right temperature. It's overcast, it is in maybe the high 60s to low 70s today, and it's going to stay overcast all day. We got a little bit of a drizzle last night, so it's an awesome time to be planting things so they have plenty of time to adjust to their containers or their new planting spots. So with that said, let's get started. Today we are going to be starting with a big planter that I have. I had emptied it. It did nothing for me this year. It was just kind of a mess. So I've emptied it out and it didn't have any drainage holes in it. So I drilled a couple of drainage holes just to make sure things don't get swampy in there. And I want to plant both this little hottie hydrangea that we got on clearance the other day. And I'm going to put some annuals in there with it as well. So I think that's going to be really fun. And I've already planted a couple because I couldn't wait. So I'll show you where those are planted as well. But then we have some other perennial plants that we're going to get in the ground today. So I'm just going to start by putting a good amount of potting mix down into here. Normally I get the large bags of potting mix, but this time the smaller bags were what was on sale and it made them cheaper than the big bags. So that's what we went with. We're going to make quick work of this today too, I think. So what I'm going to do is plant this just a little bit to the back, because I'm also going to put a sedum in front here and then my two angelonia that I got on clearance. So let me grab some more soil, because we're going to need some more before we put these in. These large pots are great because they can hold a lot more water and you don't have to water them as often. And I took the fire lights out of the pot that I had because I wanted to put them into the garden. And they will get much too big, I think, to keep in pots because they'll eventually get a little too top heavy. But this little hottie gets, I think it's 3 to 5 feet. Yes, tall and wide. So that should be a really good one for a container. The bad thing about big containers like this is they take a ton of soil to fill up. And the soil in this, I just had to get rid of it. It wasn't something that I could like refresh or anything like that. I just needed to start over. And since this hydrangea is hardy down to a zone 3, it's going to be great to have in a planter because I won't have to worry about doing anything with it over the winter time. We get down to negative 20 here usually. Not always. Some winters are milder than others. But it definitely gets really cold and we get a lot of snow and definitely plenty of moisture during the winter, so I don't have to worry about watering anything that's in a pot over the winter. So if you have dry winters and you do this, you'll want to make sure that your pot has a little bit of moisture because you don't want it to completely dry out. So this is a neon sedum. And I had this in the pot with the other hydrangea and it did really well. And I can't wait to see it bloom this year because it's probably twice as big as it was last year. All right, hopefully that's on center. Let me set back a little bit. All right, I think that looks good, other than the fact that we have some dried up blooms and some kind of sticks back here. It's about as pretty as I can make it for now. So I'm gonna water it in now and then we'll go on to the next project. Okay, change in plans. The hubby is moving it to where its destination is going to be, and then I'm watering it in because it'll be really, really heavy once I water it in. All right, this shouldn't need too much water because all of the plants had already been watered and it's nice and cool out, so I'm just gonna give it enough to settle all of the soil around the roots. And if we're lucky, in a couple of weeks we'll get a little bit of greenery on these branches where I had to cut off the dried up blooms. And it will look even prettier before the fall. And let me just get the tag off and then we'll be done. So the only thing that's going to die in this pot over the winter will be these Angelonia. And these are the ones I got for like 50 cents. Okay, all finished. I think that looks really good. And I just want to show you guys this right next to it. I'm going to see if I have enough time to grow some roots on this. I had a couple of branches break off of one of my Incredibles. I think maybe a rabbit went through them. So I've just clipped off the flowers and I have several nodes on this, and I've just stuck, I think there's 4 branches down into some potting soil and moistened it up, and we'll see how that goes. Okay, so over here we're going to be planting our cat's meow, Catmint. I have 3 of them, and last year I planted 2 Persian blue Catmint. They're very similar to the cat's meow. I have one here in the front and I have one back there. I also planted some yarrow, which you can hardly see because it's been defoliated by either the groundhog or a rabbit. So this is not a good place for it. It did grow pretty well, but again, it's just an edible piece of vegetable, or vegetation. So I'm going to take that out. I am going to save it though because I've planted some of it out in my front sunbed, and I want to, I don't want to get rid of it. I just want to save it and plant it someplace else. Now, just a little tip and trick to share with you. I also had planted some lilies in here that I wanted to try because daylilies can often be really, really tough as well and take the heat that comes off of the bricks that face south as well as the dryness that's under the eave here. But they didn't do that great. So I had kind of a trial going on last year to see who won, and the Catmint definitely won out the trial. This can save you years of time, because if I had tried, let's say, the yarrow first and then gotten rid of it, and then tried the daylilies next and then gotten rid of it, and then tried the Catmint, it could have taken me 3 years. But instead it took me 1 because I tried out 3 different plants in a difficult spot and figured out which one I liked best, and then I'm able to plant more. So we're just gonna dig up this yarrow, and you can see the soil here is just, it's crap, to be honest. It's just sandy, dry, low nutrition. So the Catmint and the yarrow were good choices for it, but like I said, this is the back of the border where the bunny run happens, so they definitely enjoyed some of it, but we'll just move it. All right, so we're going to start with this one just a little bit behind this 9 bark that we have here. The other thing that we have going on in this bed is we have some conduit that's in here. So I have to make sure to plant behind it, which means that definitely then the roots are back behind where the rainfall is. And this is going to be really devoid of rainfall because it's right behind the 9-bark. So we'll see how it does. But that's the beauty of clearance plants. All right. I'm definitely going to water these in, even though they were watered before planting, just to try to get a little bit of water in the soil. It just drains so much and straight out of it. So we're just kind of doing another line along the back here. And again, we'll see how this goes because it is a little bit further back than the others. This is kind of like planting in sand, you guys. But I don't want to amend it because Catmint does not like good soil. All right, let's water this dry soil. This looks so much better. I'm so happy with this. I hope it grows well. If it does just as well as these others, I will finally have something that's going to be able to help cover this ground. Okay, so we're out in our front sunbed now, and what I want to do is take these veronicas, which are the ever after, and these are a new one for 2023. Felt pretty lucky to have found them and be able to try them out in the garden. But it's quite a large pot, and I want to actually have 5 of these plants. I was only able to get 3, so I'm going to try to divide this one straight out of the nursery container. So let's see if we can do it. All right, so I'm just going to be looking at this. This obviously has lots of roots. Veronica are tough plants. And I think what I'm going to do is, if you can see, there's sort of a way in right through here. So I'm going to try to utilize my hori-hori knife just to get in here. And we'll see how that goes. Wow, this is a tough plant, guys. All right, so you can see why it was so tough, because that's its main stem where the roots started. But we definitely got some root section here, and you can see along the stems all of these small roots that are forming to try to connect with the soil. So this is a pretty tough plant, so I think we're going to be okay. I have one other one that I want to divide as well, so let's try that too. I think we have success. Looks pretty good. So I'm going to put a picture up so you can see what this looked like before. And it basically had these hostas along here. They were the small ones right here, the ones that you see, which are called Golden Tiara. And I took those out because it's just too much sun for them, so they were really faded and just get a little bit of sun damage. Eventually they might get a little bit more shade from this large oak leaf hydrangea, but probably not enough to really truly change the sun in this garden bed. So this being full sun, I want to use these veronica as a gorgeous show and a nice kind of curve along the edge of this beautiful weeping cherry. So that's what we're going to do today. Hopefully this will be fairly easy digging since I dug up the hostas here just the other day. Oh yay, earthworms. Definitely need to dig down a little further though, because these roots are pretty deep. But before I plant them, I'm gonna slice off the bottom. I know, again, this looks brutal, but those roots are doing nothing for this plant by going around and around in circles at the bottom. And I'm going to put the good side facing forward. Just bury some of these roots in here. They'll just break down over time. Take this bottom off of this one too. What I'm trying to do too is make sure that I don't dig up any of the bulbs that are in this area. I have some of them marked, but some of the smaller ones I can still just see their stems sticking up. Hopefully we get the spacing right, but really right now, if I don't, I can come back in next year and adjust the plants a little bit. The important part now is just to get them established before winter, so that they're nice and healthy next year. Now these should get about 16 inches wide, so they should fill in pretty well. And by the end of next year, if I need to, I probably can divide them again. Ooh, that barberry's pricking my bottom. I don't know if I told you guys this before or not, but there used to be a big maple tree in the center of this garden bed that was taken out about 15 years ago because it was dying. So every once in a while I run across these old, dry, rotted roots. So I'm trying to avoid also planting these in a super straight line, because I want there to be that gentle curve like the tree. I always like to accentuate the curves in the garden when I can. Seriously root bound here. So again, I'm gonna take the bottom off of this plant. plant's just like, help. Okay, I divided one a second time, so it's a little bit smaller here, but that's okay. I really wanted to have one at both ends, kind of capping it off, and I didn't have one for the other end up there, so now we have one. This veronica is ready to grow. All right, now I'm just going to water these guys in. Then we'll take a look at all of the beautiful changes we've done today. We also have planted one limelight and one little hottie hydrangea, and I'll show you where those are. And then I have one more little hottie hydrangea that I'm going to plant. We're not going to do it today, but I'm going to get that in the ground. And when I do my next garden tour, you guys will have an opportunity to see where it goes. So we have one full plant in the center here. We have several half plants and then some quarter plants. It'll be interesting to see how all of them do based on how large they were after they were divided and whether there's any differences in their growth habits. I really do like how the foliage on these is kind of shiny, which offsets the salvia foliage, which is a little bit more textured, and then the really small, almost gray blue, but very matte color of the mum foliage. Let's take a look at them and see how they turned out. Okay, well, it doesn't look like a whole lot today, but I'm hoping in the spring next year, in early summer and midsummer, that is just going to look great. Let's go take a look at the limelight and the little hottie hydrangea and where I put those. All right, so first up is where I put the limelight hydrangea. And you can see it is right over here in this area. And I think it looks absolutely lovely between those two arborvitaes. It's going to really fill up this space right up above the fence and come out between the tops of them. Won't that be beautiful? And it's doing really well. Its blooms have opened and it's turning from that lime color to that creamy white color now. Also in back here, we have the little hottie hydrangea. and it is planted in this garden bed where I had formerly had a small boxwood topiary. And I moved that. I still have it, but I put it in a different place. And I really think this looks beautiful. It's something that I can see all the way from our house. And it will provide a beautiful brightness to this garden area where everything else is green. But it comes in that nice, beautiful limey green color that goes so well with the rest of the things in this garden. And there's the other little hottie hydrangea sitting back there waiting to be planted. That is the last one. And the catmint has perked up just a little bit after being watered. Not quite yet, but I think it looks absolutely beautiful back there, just filling in behind that 9 bark, doesn't it? I'm so happy with that. Thanks for joining me today, you guys. I hope you had fun watching me plant some plants and how I use them to design further in my garden, and just continuing to make it a better place, because certainly the right plant in the right place makes a big difference. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time. Bye!